right, my name is Carlos Eric Bowles, and welcome back to our Leadership Speaker Series, where we get to introduce our students, some of our current students, and some of our alum. I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to talk to this young man right here, so I'm going to let him introduce himself. But if you tell us who you are, where you're from, what were you majoring in while you were here, any kind of BDP that you did. So go ahead, please introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Hey, everyone. My name is Samuel Cervantes. I'm currently living in Arlington, Virginia. I work in DC for an organization called Forward.us. We focus on criminal justice and immigration reform. I work on the immigration side as a research associate. So my day-to-day job is to look at state laws, federal policy changes at the immigration level, and I just get to track and write and analyze policy that affects me as an immigrant. I was born in Mexico, and at the age of 5, the United States became my home. My family and I moved to Houston, Texas. I went to school in Houston and was really lucky to be admitted to the University of Texas, where I ended up majoring in communication studies and completed a BDP in human rights and social justice. And I was really lucky and continue to be really happy of the support that the Rapoport program gave me, and not only meeting amazing people like Eric, who is a great mentor, but also peers in my cohort who are also doing amazing things. And completing the Rapoport program gave me a strong foundation in not only understanding complex social issues, but also finding language and methods of questioning my own thought process. And this is, I know, something that I had a lot, I would not call it a difficulty, but I would call it a great learning experience in which I really looked inward and analyzed why I wanted to work in social justice campaigns, and really finding and tapping on that energy. Because as I can talk about this point in the interview, working in social justice movements can be really draining, but also really rewarding. So I truly believe and can testify to the program's skill development and being able to be like a good steward of change.
Oh man, what an introduction. Jeez. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. So there's a lot to get to. There's a lot to unpack there, and we're going to start to sort of go one by one. But I think my first question for you is, how are you doing? How are you doing in the pandemic? How's life there? Like, are you okay? How are you?
I'm doing well. I think in context, I'm very blessed to work in an organization where my job was not affected, and my family is doing really well. But also keeping in mind with all the folks who are being affected during the pandemic, and I'm really lucky that my organization did, try to do push to help widen the folks that would get support for the federal stimulus checks. We wanted to make sure that people who were immigrants who sadly did not get COVID-19 stimulus checks get them. We're still working on it. We're going to keep pushing it. But in context, I'm really well. I'm quarantining in Arlington. I was, really happy. I moved to DC about I think I'm going on to 3 years. And I was really excited to not be a student anymore. My last year, graduated in 2019. So my last year, I actually was working full time and taking classes. So I was really excited to finally enjoy this city. But then the pandemic hit, so I had to, change my entertainment a little bit. So I'm really happy to have time to read, play video games, and sit on my couch and quarantine.
Sit on your couch and eat ice cream.
Absolutely.
As a lot of us,
delicious.
As a lot of us have been doing. Yeah, as a lot of us have been doing. So tell me, you said you mentioned you were like, is it a research analyst at Forward.us?
Yes, I'm a research associate.
Research. So, and you talked a little bit about some of the work that you do, but can you tell us just a little bit, or tell me a little bit about what that's been like for you? Because I know you started working there when you were still an undergraduate.
Yes.
And so maybe how has that, like, how did you get there first? Let's find out, like, as an undergrad, How did you get to that point? And then how did you transition into the role that you're currently in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go even a little bit back. I'll start off in my freshman year. So when I was admitted at UT, I was first not happy. I wanted to be not that I was not happy to be at UT. I love UT. I was not happy with my major and what had happened in high school. I wanted to be an electrical engineer. My parents, push signs on me because Latino parents, you can only be successful if you're either a doctor, lawyer, or an engineer. So my parents wanted me to go down the engineer route, but I didn't get into the UT school. And I really wanted to go to UT. So I was admitted and I was a government major and I was lost. I didn't really see the benefit of being a government major. I did not end up majoring in government. I ended up majoring in communication studies, which is really, really funny. But that first year, I was like, maybe I should do business. Maybe that's where I need to go because I need to follow the money, something that my parents have always taught me, which is now I'm like, as an adult, understanding what happiness means in context of your professional career, which is not just focus on your income. So my first year, it was really troubling. And then the election of 2016 was occurring. So it was this context of like, I don't know what I want to do. This presidential candidate at the time is saying really horrible things about Latinos and about immigrants. So I ended up confronting my undocumented status. And that was something that was just really weird in context of like, as a 19-year-old trying to figure out my adult life, but also trying to contextualize and really understand of my undocumentedness, which was something that I did not talk about. So I was lucky to have met other undocumented students on campus, and I got connected with the University Leadership Initiative, which is a undocumented-led organization on campus that advocates for undocumented students. And there, I truly understood what I wanted to do with my life. When I was exposed to state advocacy, when we were working to maintain institution for undocumented students, I was super thrilled to be at the Capitol, to talk to legislators, to talk to my community. And that's where I understood that in context, I wanted to be an engineer, I wanted to go in business, but underlying there, what I really loved was working with people and communicating with people. So my experience with ULI and advocating at the state Capitol turned into an internship with the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, which was my really first exposure to a professional setting. And in that job, I focused on state policy. I was tracking bills that were introduced at the Texas Capitol on immigration and education. So that was my true exposure of like, oh, this is a bill. This is the bill language. You get the School of Rock teaching of what it takes to pass legislation, but I had never actually read a bill. So that exposure and those skills, I took them to the next internship at forward.us. I interned in Texas, and in my junior year, I was admitted to the Archer program. So it took me to DC. And in the same spirit of doing state policy, I was a policy intern for forward.us. And that was a great opportunity for me to expand on my tracking. And I'm going to be using the word tracking a lot. I love just looking at the development of policy from introduction to the end. And in that same spirit, I worked on similar projects and seeing that the DACA program was terminated by the Trump administration in September 2017. I only had, I think, a few months left on my DACA. And I told my supervisor, I said, look, I don't want to go back to Texas at the end of my internship. I have so much time left. And I know that if I go back to Texas and I literally will count down the days left on my EAD, and knowing that I could be in DC advocating and getting that energy of knowing that I was being productive, I asked her, could I become a full-time employee? It took several tries, but ultimately they gave me a position. So my senior year, I was full-time employed at Forward. And then I was finishing up my last year of coursework, and I started to, and in my position now, I not only track legislation, I track state level, federal level, but I also do I also write fact sheets, I write backgrounders, and I write memos on policy. So my job is, I think it's really cool. I will also get opportunities to talk to members of Congress, be on TV. So it's just it's a really nerdy job that I love. I can't put it in other words. It's just I'm a nerd. I found a job that allows me to be a nerd every single day. And I think, like they always say, working a job is something you do that's fun. That you wake up in the morning and it doesn't really feel like work. It's fun. So I'm really blessed to have found a job that I can flex my nerdy muscles and also feel like I'm helping my community every single day.
That's amazing. But really, I mean, there's a lot in there because you started at when you were with Maldef, you were, how old are you, Sam? Like 19?
Yeah, I
With that
was
internship? Like
1920.
really young. Yeah, that's pretty young. And so to take that and then carry it forward. The other thing too about what you said is just it's really gutsy. It's a gutsy move on your part that as a senior, you're like, I want to stay, I want to work, I want to be in DC. And it's really smart because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, or tell me about it, like, did you see DC then as an opportunity to be sort of in the direct, like where the where everything is getting made, where the, you know what I mean? Was that it for you to stay there in DC as well?
Yeah. So on immigration law, ultimately it's in the hands of the federal government. So states can work on things that are on the tangent that are related that require immigration status, like driver's licenses, institution of colleges, professional licensure. All those things are related to being an immigrant, but ultimately all the power is on the federal government. They get to decide who comes in, who doesn't come in, and who is deported. And once I learned that, it clicked. This is where I need to be. This is where the big players are. But I'll also say that working in DC has also taught me the power of the state community, the communities in the state.
Mm.
So although I easily acknowledge that the big changes happen in DC, phenomenal progress can be done at the state level. Like I've just seen so many states provide benefits that 10 years ago were not available to people. Something as simple as a driver's license to be able to drive from your home to work without the fear of being stopped by a police officer and that may be the last time you see your family. It's incredible power. So being in DC has that was ultimately the decision why I stayed in DC, because of seeing how close the changes were here.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, so that's, like I said, real gutsy move, but really smart move on your part. So so you've been in some positions now, and you've been with Forward.us a little bit now, and you've been in DC. So I guess in a way, what I'm trying to sort of link up now is how you see yourself. Like, where are you going? What's the next thing for you? Are you wanting to stay there for a while, or what is your next move?
So my next move is actually applying to law school and public policy programs. Mm-hmm. Through your class, actually, I remember when we were talking about, the systems, not systems of change, but the system that we currently live in, which to me, and you probably remember the class where I was like, I looked at, it was like, what are you talking about? Like, what system are you talking about? Like, like, I'm not a particularly religious person, but like, I was like, what are you talking? Like, who created this? Like, to me, like my concept with living was like, oh, people live, 70, 90 years, and the ways we did the systems that we created now will ultimately change. So in my head, I never understood the system that we have now goes back to 300, 400 years. And I translated that to, well, what is the clearest way that we can point to the values of a community? And those are in laws. What we put down in paper that says you can do this, you cannot do this. And as someone who is undocumented, my identity is a reflection of our immigration laws. There's a word that I'm not going to mention here that starts with an I, that is, connotes something you should not do under the law. And many people use that word to describe undocumented immigrants, but it's related to the law, and it's the language that is found in the law. And for me, I just clearly realized I'm also a gay man, and 30, 40 years ago, my identity was criminalized. So it was a clear jump for me to say and to realize that you can make change to the law. Making change to the law is one way of making change. You can also make change through community and education. But for me, with my nerdy brain and I really enjoy grammar, the periods, the ands, the semicolons. I was like, well, I have this nerdy inclination towards writing and reading, and I'm like, I think the law is the best route there. and I was also exposed to a master's in public policy. And so I decided, I was currently doing right now this fall, I'm applying to law and public policy programs, and I'm hoping to still continue work in the immigration space. After working for 3 years at Forward, I realized that these professional programs are a great way of moving forward in your careers. So maybe down the line, after I complete school, I would love to be a legislative attorney for organizations like MALDEF, who flex both muscles as advocates at lobbying for policies, but also through the judicial process in litigation.
That's amazing. So I think in the lead up to this interview, you and I were emailing a little bit, and you said, "Hey, I have a new blog that I started." And so tell me about your blog, because this is, I think our listeners or folks that are watching will find it interesting.
Yeah, so about a year ago, I got the idea when I was searching for information about applying to law school to create, a blog to catalog my experience applying to law school as someone who is undocumented. And the reason that I wanted to start this blog was because I remembered the feeling I had when I was applying to undergrad in high school, and feeling lost and sort of feeling alone. And I knew there was other undocumented people in the United States. I didn't have any friends who were openly undocumented in high school. And I remember feeling really lonely and looking for information, and sometimes feeling that I had to expose myself to counselors. And those feelings started to come back when I was applying to law school, feelings of imposter syndrome, feeling that I was applying to something that was out of reach. None of my friends are attorneys. Not even my family back in Mexico has legal background. So I was really venturing into something that is new. So I decided to create a blog online where I would, write about my experience as an undocumented person applying to law school. And I also said, man, in order to move forward, in order to move a community forward, it's all about educating people. And I told myself that I needed to pass the knowledge of the torch of knowledge to the next generation, to my peers, in order for them to not have to spend an hour Googling things. And if maybe the blog could be an opportunity for people to say, "Oh, that answers my question," and there it is. And it just to build community too, and say "Hey, you're not alone. Here are other undocumented people that are lawyers." I'm doing a undocumented spotlight series, which is it's going to be ongoing, in which I interview lawyers who are undocumented, and just to showcase, look at all these amazing people who, despite their undocumented status, are doing amazing things, and so can you.
That's perfect. So tell me the blog. How do we get to your blog?
Yeah, so it's called Undoculaw, a blog for law school. And the URL is www.undoculaw.com. And Undoculaw, UNDOCULAW.
Perfect. I'll make sure and we link it up when we get this aired. So you've had a variety of internships. You have this amazing job currently. You are also now sort of trying to help other people find out about how to get into law school. To me, all of that's screams oh my God, leadership. But what have you learned about yourself, I guess, and how does that link back to the Rapoport program in terms of leadership? What have you learned about yourself as a leader?
Ooh, that's a heavy question there. I think I'll break it up into two ways. So first I'll answer what I learned about leadership. There are many forms of leaders. I think that to me was the hardest lesson to learn. I think we have this archetype of what we conceive to be a leader, which is someone who's vocal, tends to have more masculine aspects to them. They're bold, they're always in front, they're the ones who always speak first. And that was the concept of what leadership was to me at first, and I always tried to mimic that. But unfortunately, I think if you follow that model of leadership, it can lead to the imposter syndrome and can lead to sometimes not allowing other people to speak. So I think the biggest lesson I've learned about leadership is that there are many forms of leaders. There are leaders who are leaders in their field because they're brilliant, they're intelligent, they're amazing writers. Those are leaders. There are leaders who are leaders because they care, they have emotionally intelligence to create welcoming environments that allow for new ideas to thrive. There are leaders that, fit the archetype that I described at the beginning, who are the first one to volunteer, who are the first one to say yes to something. And, there are also leaders who their job is to facilitate, who their job is to make sure that other people's rise. So I think now that through my experience, I think that the form of leadership that I love is people that foster welcoming spaces that allow people to speak up and to support each other. I think good leaders are people who say, I see that you're having issues, let me help you. Or I see potential in you, let me get coffee with you. I think those are good leaders. You don't have to become president to be a leader. And these are things that I think if you want to be president, you should be president. That's not what I'm saying. I think you don't have to be a president just to be leader there. I don't want to stop anyone who if you want to be president, you should be president. You could follow that aspiration. But I think leaders come all forms and values. And I think that's what the Rapoport program taught me. I think the Rapoports, through your teachings, Eric, in which you really made us look critically at our world and be able to say why. I think that's something that I got out of the course, where I always say why. This is a statement, this is the way life is, but I'm like, why is it like that? Question, ask yourself why, because if you're not critically thinking, you're not growing. And I think that's a skill that good leaders have, regardless of the way that your leadership shows up. If you're critical and always questioning why things are happening, you will always move forward, because you don't want to stay stagnant and you don't want to just let things that are being done poorly occur. And I think in my work, I've realized that I love to speak in front of crowds, but I'm realizing that sometimes leadership is sometimes also being quiet. So I think I've become a better listener. And I think that's a lot of growth that happens to the professional sphere. That's why I think that internships, early exposure, mentorships are great ways of building your leadership and, and gaining those skills. So I think overall, I would like to be a leader that listens and finds ways of helping other people.
Well, I think you're already doing it. I think you're doing a lot of it. So I only look forward to in another 5 or 10 years, this is going to be unreal. And it already is a little bit unreal, which is very good. So, and thank you so much. It was so sweet of you, everything you said. Last question. So if you had sort of a word of advice, parting wisdom that you would share with any first year students that are thinking about like the Rapoport Scholarship or what the program's all about, what would that advice be?
Okay, I'm going to try to do it in 3. The first one is going to be do your research, find out about the scholarship early, and go talk to Eric, go say hello. I remember when I first learned about Rapoport when I visited UT over the summer before the semester started. I missed the meeting, and I don't know if I sent you an email, Eric, or if I knocked on the door, but I said, hey, I missed the meeting. I really would like to have more information about Rapoport. And I remember you opened your door and we had like a 10-minute conversation about Rapoport. And I think it's really good for you to say, hi, I'm a first year student. I'm interested and this is who I am, which leads to my second point. Be bold. Even though you're 18, 17 in college and you may feel like a child, and you will feel like a child even when I'm 23, I feel like a child at my job. I will probably still feel like a child in three years, but everything's in context. Even if you feel like you're a little kiddo, like you're not. You are loud, you are bold, and you are creative. So in the application process and in your first year, try to find experiences that allow you to showcase that boldness, that creativity. And I think, which leads to my third point, I think in the application process, showcase boldness, creativity, but be imaginative. I think that's something that the Rapoport program does really well, and that's in allowing people to imagine. And you're probably wondering, like, oh, I imagine things all the time. I have dreams all the time. And that's true, but I think something that the Rapoport Scholarship really taught me is like, what you think here, you can put down in paper and then act upon it. So in the application process, don't be scared, do not be shy, and reject the imposter syndrome, and just imagine if the essays are still the same topics, just imagine that whatever you can do is possible. And something that, and like a good mindset to have is, don't worry about resources, time, and money. Just write down what comes from the heart and what you want to see happen in the real world.
Yeah, to all of that. Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying all of that. I think you're right. I think we're looking for students that, obviously, folks that are intelligent, great kids, but we're looking for people that are outside the box thinkers. And I definitely think that's you. So you hit the nail on the head from go. Sam, I can't thank you enough for having this interview with me, and for sitting down and taking the time to do this. I sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a sincere thank you to you, to the Rapoport program and its founders and supporters. I can easily say that I wouldn't be who I am today in terms of, my professional accomplishments, but also intellectually and spiritually, in the way of, having the confidence to move forward. I think before I started the courses for Rapoport, I was really fearful of my undocumented status. I was ashamed of it. I quarreled, I had a lot of internal fights about who I was. And after completing the program, sort of renewed me and gave me confidence, because I had these feelings of change. Now I had the language and I knew of the tools to make it happen. And that was all thanks because of Rapoport.
You're very kind. Thank you so much. All right. It is great to see you. We will be talking soon.